It begins with anticipation. It's built on preparation. For the city of Barcelona, throwing one of the world's biggest parties starts with the cloud. Powered by Microsoft Dynamics CRM, Azure and SQL Server, this cloud helps ensure all voices are heard, and the festival goes off without a hitch. This cloud turns chaos into clockwork. This is the Microsoft Cloud.
We're doing the latest episode of our Cloud TV series where we talk to CIOs about upcoming cloud technologies and how it impact what they're doing. And I'm joined today by the Australian Government Chief Technology Officer, John Sheridan. Welcome to the program, John.
Thanks, Joss. I'm looking forward to it.
Do you think cloud technology has matured enough to the stage for widespread use for government IT?
I think what we've got to look at is what the potential uses might be and whether the state of the market is ready for those. So there are a range of things that I think we've indicated are quite clearly ready. The use, for example, of public-facing websites, the use for test and development sites, they're very strongly ready for those things. There are also other examples where we can use the cloud to support some of our day-to-day work in certain circumstances. We use the cloud for data.gov.au, for example. We're looking to doing the same for australia.gov.au and finance.gov.au later this year. So there are a range of things that it's ready for. There are, though, a range of other issues that make us not quite so clear as to what we need to do. And some of those are around more secure sites, they're around questions of privacy and managing those things. I don't think they're things that can't be overcome or managed with time, but we're at the beginning of some of those stages rather than well into them.
So when you look at which parts of government IT are best suited towards going to the cloud, is it more those public-facing websites and things like that are much more better suited?
So I think in public cloud, that's true initially, but I think we've got a range of opportunities in other cloud arrangements, in private cloud perhaps, looking at hybrid cloud arrangements that would provide some or other uses for government IT. The challenge for us, I think, is finding the right procurement model for cloud for the particular use we have in mind. I think it's really important to remember that what we're talking about with cloud is not necessarily new technology, but a new way of buying IT. And one of the challenges that I see regularly is people describing it as a technology. Well, we have that technology existing in current data centres. All new data centres are built with virtualisation, are built with scalability, elasticity. You'd expect those things in modern data centres today. It's this procurement model of cloud that's most important, and procuring it the right way to get the best value for money for government is clearly the direction in which we want to go.
It's about flexibility and being able to scale up and scale down. Is that what you're getting
So
at?
there's some of the aspects of cloud that are important. We're all aware of the sort of situations that occur when your load suddenly increases, you attract extra attention to a site, for example, or you've got cyclical loads that have to either at particular times of the day or particular times of the year might require more IT support than you need on an ongoing basis. So cloud has some particular advantages for us in using those arrangements to cope with extra demand quickly. Even the base load might well be suited to cloud in particular circumstances, because we know that we've got a lower CapEx, a capital expenditure requirement as a consequence of moving to the cloud. We've got an increasing, as you were saying, flexibility in what we do in those things. So there are lots of potential advantages of getting to the cloud. And I think that's why the government has made sure in its election commitments about e-government and digital economy to make sure that we know, that we, the public service, know that they want us to use the cloud for areas particularly where you don't get the sort of scale, economies of scale that you might get in very large agencies. And those things are particularly suited, those smaller requirements are particularly suited for cloud or shared infrastructure based models.
Would you say that some of the government IT cloud deployments have been done very well? Which ones would you rank as the best?
So there've been a range of such deployments at the moment. There was a trial done in immigration that explored some various things. We've been very happy with the use of cloud for data.gov.au. In our data centre as a service multi-use list arrangement, which we've had in place for some 21 months or so now, we've had over 30 contracts signed under that for about a total of $1.4 million, and they've demonstrated to us useful aspects of using cloud procurement as a form of meeting particular challenges or particular requirements for government IT. Most of those have been quite small, some of them only have been trials or proofs of concept, but we're quite confident that we've got models now that will help us drive the sort of outcomes that we want from using the cloud.
When you look at how Australian government departments and places like that have deployed cloud, how do we compare to how government agencies are doing it in other parts of the world?
Well, I think it varies according to where you are and what it is that you want to do. But I think it's important to recognise that this isn't some sort of race or competition around doing those things. We work closely with our colleagues in the US and the UK and understand, talk to them about what they're doing, try to learn from the lessons that they have in place so that we can get better use of cloud technology. Now, the challenge is, of course, again, if you like, horses for courses, making sure we have the right things to deploy into the cloud at the right time. One of the challenges of understanding of when you might use a cloud procurement is to reflect the fact that often we're in contract for things now. And you're not going to move into the cloud midway through a contract. You're going to wait till the contract reaches an end, and then in accordance with the direction from government, evaluate cloud opportunities that meet that particular requirement to use them if it's value for money to do so. So depending on the length of the contract that agencies might have, where they are in that contractual cycle, means that they might be more or less ready to move something to the cloud now. We're moving, as I mentioned earlier, australia.gov and finance.gov.au to the public cloud later this year as a part of our work in the government content management, whole of government content management system, because we think they're particular loads that are ready for cloud use and that we can go to the market now and get the sort of arrangements that we want.
So why are you doing the government cloud services panel?
So what the government wants us to do is use cloud whenever it's useful to do so. So we've got a couple of options that we might consider in how we would do things. The first option might be to try and construct a cloud of our own, the one that we would actually own. But the challenge for that is it would require us building 2 Tier 3 data centres, probably geographically separated in Canberra. We'd have to maintain them for maybe 20 years to get the return on the investment. We'd have to upgrade the technology every 5 years. It's difficult to get capital expenditure for those purposes. And in any event, our previous work has shown us that this isn't the best way, the best value for money to get data centre services to start with. So we can sort of put that option to one side. The next question is, well, could we buy now a single government cloud from a single provider? And our view is that the market isn't ready for that just at the moment, particularly when you consider that such a thing might need a 5-year contract with a couple of extensions to make it value for money for the actual supplier. Now, once you take into consideration the fast-moving changes in cloud offerings across a range of vendors, one major vendor has dropped its price for cloud, I think, more than 40 times in the last 2 years. It would be, I think, silly for us to say, well, we'll pick one now, try and pick the winner and hope that that will be maintained into the future. Instead, what we've gone back to is what historically has worked quite well for us in terms of a cloud services panel. So a procurement panel that can support the work of agencies. What we want to do is not mandate the use of the panel for agencies, but rather allow them to use it to make procurement easier. So we'll have a head agreement, we'll have orders under it, we'll look at the way we add providers to that, perhaps more regularly every year, to meet the fact that the market is changing quite rapidly there. Our work in the Data Centre as a Service multi-use list has shown us that if we structure the procurement properly, if we ask the cloud providers to specify the characteristics of their services rather than giving them a detailed requirement with which to begin, we can get a much better choice for agencies. They can get comparative quotes. We can maintain the sort of competition that tends to drive prices down, because that's a very important part of getting value for money. It's not the only part, because quality and standards and innovation, all of those things need to be considered in the work as well. But a proper procurement mechanism that can help agencies in that regard, we think will really start to meet the government's requirements of us in terms of moving more into the cloud when it's appropriate to do so. And we hope to have that panel in place by the end of this calendar year.
And just on the government CMS project, what is the status of that, and what was the thinking behind going for Drupal for that particular?
Well, I'll talk about the status first, Josh, because it gives you a better idea of where we're at, I think. So we've gone out to market for an RFP, a request for proposal around that, and we're waiting for those responses to come in, I think, towards the end of this month. We'll then evaluate the responses and we'll find a provider as a consequence of that. Our plan is to have that in place by September so we can move australia.gov.au and the current version of finance.gov.au into the new content management system. We then propose to use the period through September through to December to start to template under the government's new, what will be the digital design guide for websites, to start to template finance.gov.au and the websites of a couple of lead agencies who are keen to become involved in the project, to work up those templates, those onboarding techniques, the support arrangements we need for the CMS, to have that in place for widespread adoption by agencies at the beginning of next year. Now, why did we go to Drupal? Well, what we did in 2012 was face the situation that as we were changing australia.gov.au and we were moving the My Account function to the larger function MyGov run by our colleagues in the Department of Human Services, it was a unique opportunity for us to get out of a proprietarily hosted arrangement in terms of proprietary software and those sorts of things, and start to look at something that would follow the government's open source policy and get us a better arrangement. So we looked around broadly for what we thought might be the best solution, the best platform in which to do that. And we've published online in our blog the evaluation that we did to come up with the Drupal solution. Now, we're confident that Drupal is the right solution for this. We already do some other open source work. GovSpace is our WordPress platform that's got some 40-odd agency sites on it already and continues to provide cheap and useful interaction sites for government. But we wanted something that was a bit more developed than that, a bit more focused on content management. And Drupal was a good choice, and that's what the analysis proved. Now, having moved those sites, australia.gov.au and finance.gov.au, to this Drupal platform over the last 12 months or so, we're now ready to rehost them in the public cloud. And it would be silly, I think, to go through another iteration of changing the platform in order to move them into the public cloud. We're confident that Drupal is very well accepted across the world for enterprise size websites. We think it's a good platform for government. We know it's used in other places. Whitehouse.gov is a good example of this. So we think it's the right platform for us to take us into this more cloud-focused, better future for australia.gov.au and a range of other sites too.
Great. John Sheridan, thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks, Josh.